we are living against the law, doing things illegal, but we're not monsters, anything like that. We're human beings. That's all, just mere human beings. Only we're different from, as we say, the average citizen, because we are addicted to drugs. All the young people, I mean, I want to tell them, I know they have the impression that this is paradise, you know, though that's a utopian state, and that's what utopian, that means paradise, you know, as far as this drug bit is concerned. But it's not, believe me, it's truly not. You don't know just how much hell it is until you get a hold of it. And when you, let's say, I say, you know how you've seen an octopus? That's the same thing with drugs. It's just like a giant octopus. Once it gets a hold to you and wraps its tentacles around you, it slowly squares to death unless someone chops it off and helps you to get out.
Hello, I'm Don Bruchi. 2 years ago, a drug addict who was serving time at a women's prison here in Maryland wrote the following article that appeared in the prison magazine. It read in part, "Is there a solution? I am referring to drug addiction. If there had been a solution, I don't think we'd be back here today for the same thing which had us incarcerated during that time. There were quite a few of us who were here in 1951 and came back in 1961, which should not have been if there had been anyone interested in our welfare. Are we as human beings able to get the decent jobs or anything else we may want without blurting out our past? When you're feeling blue, depressed, and it seems that everything is going against you, where is there to turn? Who will listen to your troubles?" Well, the state of Maryland, like most of the other 49 states of our country, is currently attempting to listen to the troubles, to find a workable method of providing genuine help for its portion of the nearly 47,000 known narcotics addicts who live in the United States. But peculiar problems exist on at least 3 levels. The problem of understanding the addict, the problem of narcotics law enforcement, and the problem of finding a permanent cure. During this 3-part series, we shall examine each of these elements: the addict, the law, and the cure. First, the addict. What is the person who resorts to drugs like?
When they find out that somebody says, oh, she uses drugs or he uses drugs, my God, I don't care, you can be the nicest person in the world 2 minutes before. But once they find that out, ooh, man, you have 2 heads, and I don't know what all. I mean, you taboo.
And sooner or later you'll be involved with the law, same as I was. Then you'll have the hardships with your parents and everything, having to come down and bail you out, go to court, and getting it spread in the papers and your name in the paper. I tell you, it's something you don't want to go through. Having being ashamed, walking down the street and somebody say, "Hey, look, there goes a junkie," and laugh.
One element standing in the way of true public understanding of the addict is the reluctance of the addict to tell his story. Because terms such as junkie, dope fiend, and hophead are in everyday use, few addicts or even casual users of less potent drugs venture into the public spotlight by telling their story. Fewer still allow recognizable pictures of themselves to be shown. But the addict who really wants help wants you to know and understand. This girl had the rare courage to tell her story and allow herself to be seen. Like the inmate of the women's prison who wrote the article asking, "Is there a solution?" This girl has also served time in Maryland's prisons for drug addiction. She has had long hours to look into herself and ask, "Is there a solution?" Those long hours have convinced her that whatever the solution, it will not be an easy one. How did it all begin?
Because I thought it was just for the kicks, because the crowd was doing it, and that was the rave, that was the thing to do. I thought that, well, you know how it is if you're considered a square, you're not with it. If everybody else is doing something, you're not. But here later come to find out that wasn't it, because if it was just that, then I probably could have left it alone. I was 12 years old. The first narcotics that I ever had, it was marijuana, what they call pot. It was And where I started was the part of town that I lived in, and the first fella came down and he gave something to the boys, and they started, and the girls got curious and wondered what they were doing. They were always huddling, and they finally let us in on it, and we started. And then from there, it went to the other. At that time it was called horse, which is heroin. And from there, it just continued to grow until then I stopped for a while, and then later on I started back again. Oh, the first that first shot, oh man, well after you get that, I mean that's it. You never find that anymore. You constantly look for it, but that's out. And after you get a habit, it's no more thrill or kick to it. I mean, then you're purely down to business. You're doing it just to walk along the streets and be normal like your neighbor next door or one around the corner. I mean, then it's just to keep you going so you can do your daily chores and whatever you have to do. That's just the way it is for us. After you get a habit, there's no more kick to it. That kick is gone forever, you know. And then you're just going along. And if you don't get it, that's when the trouble starts. Because with heroin, you can develop a vicious habit within about 3 weeks. They have these programs on TV, and every time one comes up about drug addiction, well, you know, all the addicts, we get together and we are racing headlong for the TV because we want to see, and we're hoping that maybe this time it'll be the real thing. I don't know why they can't make it realistic. I'm still waiting. I haven't seen one yet. And if they want the information, there's enough addicts to go around. All they have to do is come to us, and we'll gladly tell them. The usually they say the teenagers. I mean, it's not just confined to teenagers. It goes up to all ages and all doors, all walks of life. It's just not the poor man. It hits the rich families, too. So I haven't seen one film yet on TV that shows actually what a drug addict goes through and experiences in everyday life of trying to keep his or her habit up. That we are not the monsters that the public is led to believe. We're human beings, just like your next door neighbor. Only thing that we're weak human beings. I say that because all persons that use drugs are weak to a certain extent. If they weren't, we wouldn't be using them in the first place. Now, what that weakness is, or what we're trying to run away from or overcome, we don't know. That's why we need help. We need psychiatric help to help us to understand our problem and how to deal with it so that we can become more useful to society and more useful to ourselves. That's the only way we can beat this thing. You know one thing? The alcoholic or the person who drinks alcohol, it doesn't have to be an alcoholic, is louder and more boisterous than we are. I mean, because they're loud and they're, you know, and whatnot. I know you've seen a person under the influence of alcohol, but a person that's under influence of narcotics, they're not loud or anything. It's just that we get around, we talk. I mean, I could be talking to you, and if you didn't know that I use drugs, that would be it. We sit down, we hold normal conversations. We talk about the world happening, the world crisis, the way things are in the world now. We even raised Cain when the price of sugar went up. If you're an alcoholic, you know, if you take that first drink, that's it. It's the same thing with drugs. Once you get off it, you got to stay away from it, away from the environment, the people that use it, and what you just can't associate with them, regardless how good a friend you think they are to you, or you just have to stay away from them. Not that you want to, but if you want to help yourself and want to do the right thing, that's what has to be done. You got a habit. Well, I'm telling you, it's very expensive. See, and even now, it's different than when I first started. The pills were $3. It's $3 a cap. And now, they don't have any more pills. They have these bags, which are called bags, packs. They're $10. Maybe you might start off, you shoot a half a bag when you get up in the morning. That's your shot. And later on in the day, you might do the other half. And then that evening, you do half, maybe before you go to bed. And then gradually from there, you graduate to a whole bag. And just think, if you have to take 3 bags or 4 bags a day, that's 30 or 40 hours a day. And that's every day. I mean, once it gets like that, you just can't go and take, say I take a little bit, because that's not going to do any good. You're going to still be sick. Whatever your shot is, that's what you have to keep from being sick.
$30 or $40 a day. Where does the money come from? The law enforcement officials, of course, insist that drug addiction is behind most of the crime in the United States, just as an 1870 judge insisted that alcohol was behind every crime. The statement that addiction breeds crime undoubtedly needs modification, since many law enforcement officials believe that drug addiction does not follow a Jekyll and Hyde pattern, that it does not instill a criminal mentality in a person basically without criminal bent. Persons who have worked with youth gangs have noted that those who take drugs tend not to become leaders in criminal activity, but to retire from the gang and become loners. And police records show that, contrary to popular impression, crimes of violence are rarely connected with drug use. Where then does the addict get the money for his habit? What methods does he or she use to keep up with that $30 or $40 a day treadmill? And, more important, where does that treadmill lead?
As far as an addict is concerned, there's only one way to support a habit, and that's you got to be going against the law. I see as boosting, which is stealing, as hanging paper, which is forging, and for some of the women's prostitution, it's playing the Murphy and the drag. Oh, it's all kind of little con games that you get into to get the money. You can believe me, I think you work harder at that than you would at an honest job 8 hours a day. Because your mind is constantly thinking, trying to keep ahead of the man. I'm quite sure there are some addicts that had criminal records before, they started using drugs. But then there are some that haven't. The first time they'd ever gotten into any trouble was after they started using drugs. When to keep the habit up, they had to start stealing. We have a few addicts that even work, They get their shot in the morning, they go to work, they got space when they come home in the evening, and they can take off, But if they don't, then they can't even be normal for the rest of the day to keep their jobs. The addict is considered as a criminal. That's it. I mean, as far as being sick or have a mental defect, nobody seems to think about that. The law doesn't, and the public, I don't think, believes it or knows it. But that's what it is. I mean, just like an alcoholic, he's considered ill, and they have places, institutions where you can put him and he's treated. The same thing for the insane. But for an addict, nothing. And that's what it is. We have a mental defect. I mean, it's mental. It's not physical. It's physical as far as when we get addicted to it. But before then, it has to be something before then that starts you to using drugs in the first place. That it could be something that happened even when you were a child, or something. There's something in your makeup, there's something that's happened in your life that causes you to use drugs. I don't know what it is, because like I said, I don't even understand my own problem. But I do say it's something I'll make up upstairs. I mean, that is mental. This is a mental block. It's something that causes us to use it, and it has to be, after we get our body straightened out, you have to get your mind straightened out, because if the body's okay and the mind is still messed up, you're still wasted. In '56, I got busted, and I got locked up, but I made probation. And when I got out, I stayed off for a while. Then I went back again, And I got locked up again in 60. And I got 3 years there. I was considered a second offender, and second offender, there's no parole. I've never been to a hospital or anything because when I got busted, there wasn't any hospitals. The first time, there wasn't any place to go in 56. And in 60, the only place they had, they just started, Crownsville, and was only for first offenders. They didn't have anything for second offenders. And as of now, if you are locked up or incarcerated, they don't have anything for second offenders. You can't go to the hospital or anything from the courtroom. And a lot of people become embittered behind that second offender bit because some of them have wanted help. At first asked for help and they couldn't get it because it wasn't any available. And then when they go back and they're second offenders, there's still no help for them. You're put in jail now, they put you there. And there's no rehabilitation, there's no help for the addict there as far as being cured when you're in jail. But yet and still, there's no chance for parole. I don't understand. You're just to stay there so you can get ready, come back out since you don't have any help, and do the same thing over again. If incarcerating was the thing, why is the penal institution, why do the penal institutions have so many second and third offenders? Look like if that was the thing that was curing them, we wouldn't have any. It wouldn't be any in there now. As for the cure, you cold turkey. You make it or you don't. I mean, so far I haven't heard anybody not making it, but there's always a possibility. It has been known that the cold turkey some people don't come through it. As for myself, in 60, that's what I went through. I mean, when I was popped, I went to Baltimore City Jail, and for 6 days, that's what it took me. And on the 6th day, that's when I got up. But I'm telling you, when this thing first started, it was something. First, it feels like, your nerves, it messes with your nervous system. And it feels as if about 1 million tiny insects is crawling underneath. It even feels like the flesh on your body is crawling. And from that stage, and you start to having these terrible cramps where your muscles start cramping and pulling and whatnot. And then your stomach, you get cramps in your stomach. And then your bowels break on you. You don't have any control over that at all. And from there, and you're in a world of trouble. I mean, and you break out in the sweats and the aches. I mean, the aches. They say that a labor having a child. I'm telling you, I've had a child, and then I've had this other, and I'm undecided which is the worst. I think I'd rather have the baby any day than to go through that, because if there's a part of hell, drug addiction and cold turkey is truly a part of it. I'm telling you, that's as close to hell as I've been here on this earth. Now, I can't make you understand just what cold turkey is, by talking, because talking I never could just let you know what it is. But believe me and take my word for it, and you have 1,000 other junkies that you can, that it's hell. It's truly hell. When you're thrown in and you're cut off abruptly, no drugs, no nothing, you just have to lie there and suffer. I mean, I've known people to try to hang it up, and I've known a couple that have hung it up. And when I say that, I mean killed themselves, because they was afraid of going through it, what they had to go through.
Cold turkeying, the process whereby an addict is simply torn away from his drugs and told to go it alone. As far as providing a physical cure, the cold turkey system undoubtedly works. But addiction is being regarded more and more as a pathological problem, a reflection of the fact that the individual is emotionally and socially disturbed. This does not excuse the addict, for he or she is usually well aware of the action being taken to procure drugs. He or she usually knows that the moral as well as the civil law is being broken. But the addict usually pays, if not through the agony of cold turkeying in the darkness of a prison cell, in 100 other small ways. They'll pay with their envy of normal day-to-day activities, the ability to get and keep a job, the ability to sleep and plan and hope, the joy of really being free.
When I was in prison, I worked at the state sewing shop. I learned how to run a single needle machine. But that's not too much good to me out here because I can't very well go to an employer. First, when you go, they want to know where you learned, where you got your experience at. And, if you tell them, how would I say I'm telling them that I got it at Maryland Institution for Women. That's the only, by the way, that's the only thing that was changed while I was there, was the name. It changed from the Women's Reformatory to Maryland Institution for Women. But anyway, if I can't go to him, if I go and tell him that, then he's going to want to know what you are incarcerated for. And if I say narcotics, well, I guess you can just about imagine that's my job right there. And so even with the training I have, it's not doing me any good. So I get on the streetcar, I walk there, certain I see young ladies, and I do envy them. I said, if I could only be like that, As far as appearances is concerned, walk, I mean, they look at me, they figure that I am, like that. And I'm saying inside that how she doesn't know how much I envy her, how much I wish that I could be like her, to get up in the morning, normal, like you get up and brush your teeth and go and eat breakfast. You don't know what one of those mornings would mean to me, just to get up and just to be normal, because as far as an addict is concerned, he's addicted. He hates to go to bed. The first thing, he hates to go to bed because he knows if he goes to bed, when he wakes up, he's going to be sick. Then after, eventually, when he finally goes to bed, then he lays there. He's trying, even after he wakes up, he's trying to hold his eyes closed as long as possible to keep from moving, because he knows as soon as he moves and has to get up, that's it. He knows he's going to be sick. And who would like to have that every morning for a whole lifetime if it could be avoided? I think I had a chance to finish. My people were behind me. I had a chance to finish my schooling, even go to college if I had wanted to. And I think with that, if I had have continued to school and felt as if I wanted to go to college for education, I could have had a good job and a good home. Because when I say some of the good things in life, I don't think there's anything any better than a nice home. If you have children, to go to work and come home, make a nice home for your children and take care of them, and don't have to be worrying about the police breathing down your neck or walking down the street and wondering if you're going to have to go downtown and be on the bench, or wondering if you're going to be sick today or tomorrow. I mean, that's no life. All the young people, I mean, I want to tell them, I know they have the impression that this is paradise, though that's a utopian state, and that's what utopian is. That means paradise, as far as this drug bit is concerned. But it's not, believe me, it's truly not. You don't know just how much hell it is until you get a hold of it. And when you, let's say, I'll say, how you've seen an octopus, and you know how it grabs you, once it gets its tentacles around you and it grabs you and slowly squeezes you to death. That's the same thing with drugs. It's just like a giant octopus. Once it gets a hold to you and it wraps its tentacles around you, it slowly squares to death unless someone chops it off and helps you to get out. I don't think I've gone too far to be cured. Even if you're cured physically, it's upstairs in your mind, you still have to do something about that. That's the most important thing, what people don't seem to understand. They think that once you're off of it, that's it. That's all it is. If you can stay off for 2 years, I mean, that's it. You should be cured. You should never think about it anymore, and that's it. I mean, you're cured. You've been off it that long, and everything is over with. But that's not so. I mean, I don't know why it's not, but even after you've been off any length of time, it's still, you still can go back on. And even after you've had the cure, I mean, it's just like anything else. You have to take it step by step. I mean, if you make up your mind that you really want to, and you have the proper help, I think it can be done. But you have to want to help yourself first. If you don't want to help yourself, it's nothing anyone can do for you. But if you get in your mind that you want to be helped, and you say that this is it for me, and then you go on and put your mind to it, and with the proper help, I think you can beat it. But as I said, we are weak human beings, and it's something that we can't face up to, that we're constantly running away from. And we got to be careful that whatever it is doesn't catch up with us again, because if it does, at least little thing, we might sidestep again.
And so the drug addict exists in a world of impending pain. He or she knows the pain of withdrawing from drugs, and he or she knows the 100 small pains of staying with them. Then why not quit? Well, the answer to this perfectly logical question is that a person with self-discipline enough to quit probably would never have started. The few persons who have acquired a physical dependence on narcotics that were prescribed for them in the course of some illness may be permanently cured, because they are usually strongly motivated to remain off drugs once they have been freed of the physical need for them. Members of the medical profession who have become addicted and who take cure have a 95% prospect of remaining free of the habit after treatment. But for most of the others, a longing for the escape from reality or for the positive pleasure they experienced in taking narcotics proves irresistible. Either that or the prospect of a self-imposed cold turkey looms as simply too painful. In part 3 of this series, WMAR-TV will discuss the octopus and the cure, the experiments that are being carried out in Maryland and other states in the hope of finding a way of dealing with the narcotics habit, the successes and failures of these many experiments, and the hope for the future. And in part 2, the octopus and the law, WMAR-TV will present the many problems facing law enforcement officials in their efforts to cut down on the flow of illegal narcotics. One particular problem of the law is the finding of ways to distinguish between the mere users of drugs and the commercial peddlers who make a killing off the weaknesses of others. At the conclusion of the remaining 2 parts of this series, WMAR-TV will make concrete editorial recommendations on how we believe the problem of drug addiction can be at least partially solved here in Maryland. This is Don Bruchi speaking.
And we have built a cat. Oh, we're not afraid of
I don't think I've gone too far to be cured. Even if you're cured physically, it's upstairs in your mind, you still have to do something about that. That's the most important thing, what people don't seem to understand. They think that once you're off of it, that's it. That's all it is. If you can stay off for 2 years, I mean, that's it. You should be cured. You should never think about it anymore, and that's it. I mean, you're cured. You've been off it that long, and everything is over with. But that's not so. I mean, I don't know why it's not, but even after you've been off any length of time, it's still, you still can go back on. And even after you've had the cure, I mean, it's just like anything else. You have to take it step by step. I mean, if you make up your mind that you really want to, and you have the proper help, I think it can be done. But you have to want to help yourself first. If you don't want to help yourself, it's nothing anyone can do for you.
Hello, I'm Don Bruchi. You've got to want to help yourself. This is just one of the phrases that one hears again and again from the lips of the person who is addicted to drugs, that person who is in the grip of the octopus. It's a simple phrase, an uncomplicated plea for assistance in the addict's struggle to be freed of his habit, or at least it seems that way on the surface. That probing writer Aldous Huxley, in a work entitled The Doors of Perception, said that humanity at large will be ever able to dispense with artificial paradises seems very unlikely. This desire to live, even temporarily, in an artificial paradise is undoubtedly at the base of much narcotics addiction. For many drab, unfortunate lives, the effects of heroin add fire and music to an otherwise stifling existence. Even the constant rat race to procure illegal narcotics soon becomes an adventure, an end in itself that is alternately degrading, dangerous, and exciting. For these reasons, many people believe that there is no cure for the narcotics addict, that the addict really desires and needs the crutch of heroin to lean on, that the phrases he utters about being cured are only cliches he has overheard and knows the rest of society wants to hear. Others believe the addict does want to be cured, but is in great need of guidance and personal attention. In other words, a person who cares. This is Doris Polston, a worker with the Baltimore Department of Public Welfare. For the one addict we know who had the courage to tell her story publicly in the hope it would help others, Doris Polston became the person who cared. Over a period of several weeks, she did what the addict could not bring herself to do, arranged for commitment to a state hospital on a voluntary basis. It was, she hoped, the first step in the direction of total rehabilitation.
Once a person recognizes or realizes that there is something that's wrong and there's some solution needed, then half of the battle is almost won if they can just realize this. She came to us asking for help, and this even encouraged us more to really try to do something about it, because here was a person coming, asking, to be helped, admitting to what the fault was and trying to do something different. We had thought at first of a federal place. However, the waiting list there is so long that we really couldn't get her there. We did find this place locally that offered help, and it was from 2 weeks to a month. This was the only place here in the state that had a type of service for her condition. Therefore, we thought we would give it a try. We felt if she would stay in there the complete month, upon being released, we would try to get her into a housing unit and work with her. And surely, after a period of 90 days or so, we could show some progress she had made. Thursday, when I went to get her to be admitted, to take her to be admitted to the hospital, she explained to me that she knew this was going to be something that would really be hard for her, but she really didn't want to let me down. I told her then that it wasn't so much of letting me down, but letting herself down, and this was something that she had to do for herself and for her children. We talked about the things that we planned to do when she was released from the hospital. Also, we mentioned things that she and the children could do together. She then said that she really felt as though she had enough courage to do this because she could see now that by continuing with using the drugs, there was no future for her or the children. And she loved them dearly and just had to do something to be able to ensure some type of happiness and future for them.
And I felt sad about leaving them, and I was apprehensive about what was going to happen, what I was going forward to, how things were going to work out there. And I was thinking more so about the after effects than of my stay in the hospital. Would it be permanent? Would it last? And so forth and so on. Because as you know, this is not a new thing with me. And that's the most thing that was uppermost in my mind, about how long would it last? Would this be it this time for keeps? But I know that's up to me. I'm the only one that can answer that. So I don't know why I even keep asking myself that question. But I guess by being human, knowing my weakness, that's what I'm afraid of, that I might fall back down. But I hope not. And when things look bright as of now, but they say the brightest is when the brightest comes just before the darkest moment.
What are the odds facing the addict who seeks medical treatment for his or her problem? The depressing fact about hospitalizing addicts is that over the years, the medical programs that have been instituted for them have not been notably successful. The highest level of addiction program occurs within the federal government's public health service at 2 hospitals, Lexington, Kentucky, and Fort Worth, Texas. Studies have shown that up to 90% of the patients treated at these hospitals were back on drugs within 6 months after discharge. Normally, these facts would be discouraging, but many pioneer workers in the field of narcotics, such as former Assistant Surgeon General Dr. Lawrence Kolb, still believe the federal program is a sound one.
A drug addict, the approach to them is to get them in a hospital if possible, but he can be treated outside, to withdraw the drug from him by accepted means, such as they've adopted at Lexington, then rehabilitate him in the hospital with certain measures of work over a period of about 4 months. After that, he should go to his home and not be followed by the police, but he should be followed by social workers who do not report the matter to the police at all, who help him along to get a job and help him to keep a job. In this way, you will find that a very large proportion, even of present-day addicts, who are mostly unstable people, would become rehabilitated. I know from positive fact of people that I have treated and have seen over a period of 40 years that many of these people are rehabilitated, they get rid of their habit, and they continue to be useful citizens.
According to the chief social worker at Lexington, however, the most important phase of treatment is unfortunately the least developed on the federal level. This is the period of follow-up rehabilitation in the patient's home community. According to still other studies of the problem, the ideal treatment for addicts should occur not at the federal level at all, but in a system of specialized centers on the state or local level. Dr. Isidore Turk, director of the Maryland Department of Mental Hygiene, made these comments on Maryland's specialized treatment facilities.
Drug addiction most commonly occurs in the socially, economically, and culturally deprived areas of a large urban city. This is true of New York City, Los Angeles, and it is also true in Baltimore. Baltimore ranks 10th in the country in the prevalence of drug addiction. We find that in these socially deprived, culturally deprived slum areas, not only does drug addiction develop, but also delinquency, alcoholism, and retardation as a consequence of the deprivation. A few years ago, a specialized treatment program on a pilot basis was established at Spring Grove State Hospital when our legislature enacted a law permitting courts to commit addicts who had been involved in some minor offense to Spring Grove State Hospital for treatment. This is a very limited program, and it involves only male patients on a relatively small ward where approximately some 10 individuals are treated at a time. So far, this program has had some beneficial effects. There have been at least 6 individuals released to the community, and among these, we know definitely that 4 have remained free of drugs for a period of a year and a half. This is encouraging, but more importantly, it is necessary for them to have a follow-up program which permits them to work, to seek counsel from their psychiatrist and social worker, and also to provide for whatever necessary resources that the family may have in dealing with them to avoid stimulating further addiction on their part. This program is quite limited. There are other programs in the state, but which are not specialized. For example, private hospitals do have some addicts, and our other state hospitals do have addicts that come in on a voluntary basis. But insofar as a specialized, concerted effort in the treatment of the addict is concerned, this is, at the present time, is the only one that we have.
If then the federal hospitals are crowded and lacking in local community services, the state facilities limited to 10 male patients at one small treatment center, the only other place for an addict to turn for help is to a private physician or a private hospital. Dr. Gerald Klee, Associate Professor of Psychiatry, the University of Maryland.
One question that could be asked is, why is it that doctors at the present time are doing relatively little to help to treat the narcotics addict? Now, the same question could be asked about other professionals in our community. The answer, of course, is that they could be doing a great deal more, and although there would be some reluctance, I think they'd be willing to if we had changes in our laws that would take the narcotics addict from the status of a criminal to recognizing him as being a person who is physically, emotionally, and socially ill.
According to these men, what should be done to help the addict?
A very important element in the rehabilitation of addicts is for the police not to bother them after they leave the hospital and have had treatment. The pursuit of addicts by policemen causes more of them to relapse than would otherwise relapse. And it is a pursuit that in many cases is entirely wrong from the standpoint of how addicts should be handled. We're not providing much training in the treatment, the understanding and treatment of narcotics addiction in medical school at the present time, although there is some. But the reason why we don't is about the same reason why we don't spend a lot of time teaching about tropical diseases. It's simply that we ourselves have very little opportunity to see and treat these conditions. Now, we do see narcotics addicts, and we do provide very quick cursory treatment in occasional cases, but we don't have any opportunity to provide any comprehensive or long-range therapy for these individuals. If there were the necessary changes in the laws, attitudes, and practices which would permit the medical profession to treat narcotics addicts, then I'm sure that our training programs would also be influenced by it.
Since drug addiction is such a complicated problem and does involve a number of agencies, at the present time our efforts are scattered and fragmented. I think it would be very desirable to centralize responsibility for the care of the drug addict and for the development of programs. In this way, all of the agencies who are concerned with the problem can be mobilized under unified leadership, and in this way, the most effective use of our resources develop. I think that in this way, we can do much more than we are doing now in the treatment and the prevention of drug addiction.
How did the present facility satisfy the needs of one addict? When she entered the hospital, it was a bright, sunny day full of hope. 8 days later, it was raining and cold, an especially miserable day for social worker Doris Polston.
We were quite upset and disappointed this morning to learn that she had left the hospital. We called to find out how she was progressing and found out that she had signed herself out early this morning. One thing I feel so badly about, and the reason I feel as though I was so upset about her leaving the hospital, was that when I left her on Friday, I promised her so faithfully that I would write her the beginning of the next week. Well, with having to check on the house and to see how the children were doing, to find out if the housekeeper was doing what we had expected her to do and how the aunt was really managing with the children, I failed to write as soon as I had said I would. I wrote her on Thursday and mailed it that day, and I really doubt seriously if she received that letter before leaving the hospital. I tried so hard in the letter to encourage her, and I do feel that if she had received it before leaving, maybe this would have given her a little more strength. She could have had the feeling that, well, I'm in the hospital now, and everybody's forgotten about me, or what do I have to prove anything to or for? No one really believes in me, and I really feel badly about this.
Why had she left the hospital after such a short time? Perhaps even she herself didn't know the real reason.
I tried to stick it out, but I guess what really snapped me out was a small, simple thing. I was so hungry. And then that Friday morning, I was really looking forward to eating. I was sitting there anticipating at least I was going to have a bowl of cream of wheat for breakfast. And they come in that tray and brought me a glass of juice and a cup of coffee and a glass of milk. And I burst out crying. I just couldn't take it no more.
She could have walked out into the rain that day for any of a dozen reasons. Many would have seemed weak and unimportant if it were not for the basic nature of the narcotics user. For psychiatrists tell us they have a low frustration level, that they are extremely impulsive, quick to react to small or even imaginary setbacks. Later, she mentioned a reason for leaving that was not insignificant: the pain of withdrawal. According to officials at the small narcotics unit at Spring Grove, there is no need for an addict to suffer during withdrawal. But at Springfield, the only facility open to this woman, dealing with addicts was a new experience.
I will, because I'm going home now, not tomorrow. I want to go home today. So he said, you want to go home today? I said, yeah. He said, okay, then I'll see my wife. I'll notify my wife and she'll make the necessary arrangements. And he left.
Nor could hospital officials offer any positive explanation as to why she left. Instead, their feelings seemed to be a mixture of disappointment at her leaving and frustration at the lack of facilities that would have been available to her if she had stayed.
In the very beginning, I had definitely the feeling that she wanted to be helped. Many of drug addicts have periods during which they realize that the drug is disastrous for their physical and mental health. And at that moment, they do come for help. And this help certainly should be granted to them.
I felt very happy about this girl when she came in. I felt she was an unattractive, intelligent girl who had excellent motivation. She found herself in her 20s with a terrific problem. She had children. She's taking care of a crippled aunt. She was on welfare. she was having every reason to be well motivated to kick her habit.
On the first day the patient was there, she was very cooperative and really seemed to want help. She was calm, and I think she really did want help.
By her story, I felt that we would have no trouble with withdrawal. The story she gave was that she, when she was, quote, rich, she would use up to 8 fixes a day, but normally she was a 4-fix-a-day user and had, by self-reduction in dosage, cut down to about 1 fix a day. Now, if this were true, one would expect we could withdraw her without any earth-shaking events. She would get by without too much in the way of withdrawal symptoms. Other patients we have had in who admit to 4 fixes a day, we've had no particular problems with. Now, either we did not have a true story as to the amount of heroin she was using, or the people who are on more fixes a day and get by in withdrawal without trouble are using heroin so adulterated, so diluted, that their effective dose is far less than they think it is.
The 5th day, when I came back to work, she was quite upset, complaining with pains in her legs and her abdomen, and begging for medication, which she was already getting quite a bit of medicine, should have relaxed her. We thought she was getting enough.
In any case, the admitting orders which I wrote when she came in were to cover withdrawal over a period of 48 hours, and I felt very comfortable with this. So you just never know whether your planned therapy is going to be adequate or not.
It may be due to the fact that she never was in a mental hospital and did not know that she had to be placed with very upset patients.
My feeling about her was that she was quite well motivated to use the hospital, and certainly her strength in her getting here certainly proved that she could do this. I would have liked to have seen her use pre-release planning prior to leaving the hospital to help her in making or in utilizing her inner and outer resources.
Here at Springfield, we can only hope to deal with the medical part of withdrawal. As an overpopulated, understaffed hospital, we can't give the psychiatric support which these people need and which would require a long period of time in order to help them adjust their personalities so that they would not have to lean on heroin as a crutch. I don't believe that we pretend to be able to cure addicts with what we have to offer, but if we can help them over the hump, and if their motivation remains secure and firm, if 1 in 20 is able to kick the habit by our help, we feel that's worthwhile.
But I'm so tired sometimes and so frustrated often after that work. Not enough help. We can only do so much, you know?
6 weeks after her entry into the hospital, the addict was still free of drugs. Her cry of "you have to want to help yourself" had been heard, and in the person of social worker Doris Polston, she had received the help and understanding of someone who cared. Yet, she is the first to recognize that she is far from cured permanently. For after all, what had society really done for her? She had been in a hospital without adequate facilities, without a great deal of experience in treating addicts. She had been withdrawn from drugs painfully. She had returned to the same community, the same faces, the pushers, the frustration. She had returned to a community without planned follow-up treatment for addicts, a community with one outpatient clinic for the mentally ill that freely admits it knows practically nothing about drug addiction. She had returned to a community where mere possession of narcotics paraphernalia is enough to send her to prison for the rest of her life, a community that still regards the addict as violent, dangerous, a criminal. In the future, social worker Polston will continue to work with her, striving to foster an increased sense of responsibility in her client, going well beyond the means extended to most narcotics addicts in Maryland. Yet, even with this help, she may slip back. But if she should, who is to say that she failed?
This is a Channel 2 editorial. In this study, we have seen the way addiction begins and its terrible effects. We have seen the difficulties of combating the narcotics traffic because laws are chaotic, contradictory, antiquated. And we have seen that public efforts toward cure and rehabilitation fall miserably short of minimum requirements. So we must attack all three fronts of this cancerous problem. The first need is public education, especially among our teenagers, as to the insidious way addiction follows swiftly on the heels of so-called thrill-seeking. We must then make sure the victim knows how he or she can be helped, and make sure further that early and sufficient means for help are available. A good way to accomplish the latter would be to concentrate in a single agency the responsibility for organizing the present scattered programs into a single coordinated campaign, and to expand it to meet a present need the size of which is indicated by the fact that in Baltimore City alone, Captain Joseph Carroll's police squad lists 8,000 known users of illegal narcotics. Our nominee for this task is the State Department of Mental Hygiene, which already is making strides to combat the somewhat similar problem of alcoholism, and thus has the attitude and the technique to tackle this one. Captain Carroll made a powerful point that each addict, like a typhoid Mary, can infect 10 people a year with his grim habit. So we subscribe to the get the addict off the street principle. But it also seems wise to differentiate between the person who is only a victim of narcotics and the vicious dealer in degradation who sells the stuff. For the seller, we recommend penalties so stiff as to constitute a massive deterrent to the traffic. For the victim, we propose commitment for reasonable periods to hospitals properly staffed and equipped to treat addiction. For those who come before the courts, this would not be a voluntary commitment, but an outright sentence. Addicts not in the toils of the law, but who wish such treatment, could enter voluntarily, but would have to agree to remain for the full treatment. The frightening figure that 90% of those in the federal hospitals for narcotics are repeaters points toward the prime need currently unmet anywhere in our fight against dope addiction. This is rehabilitative follow-up. The young woman who so courageously told her own story in the hope it would help her and others described the frustrations, the difficulty of finding employment, the community cold shoulder that is turned to the addict even after a cure. Such discouragement sends so many back to the habit. But if each addict who goes through the cure can be given a helping hand in finding a job, improving his environment, facing up to his social, psychological, and economic problems, we will have gone a long way towards solving a vexing and dangerous situation. WMAR-TV recommends that the Maryland legislature take a long, hard look at this situation in this state which ranks 10th in the nation in its percentage of dope addicts. We recommend the laws be clarified and strengthened, and that means to help those who want to be helped be provided. This has been a Channel 2 editorial. Bob Cochran speaking for WMAR-TV.
Why had she left the hospital after such a short time? Perhaps even she herself didn't know the real reason.
I tried to stick it out, but I guess what really snapped me off was a small, simple thing. I was so hungry. And then that Friday morning, I was really looking forward to eating. I was sitting there anticipating at least I was going to have a bowl of cream of wheat for breakfast. And they come in that tray and brought me a glass of juice and a cup of coffee and a glass of milk. And I burst out crying. I just couldn't take it.
She could have walked out into the rain that day for any of a dozen reasons. Many would have seemed weak and unimportant if it were not for the basic nature of the narcotics user. For psychiatrists tell us they have a low frustration level, that they are extremely impulsive, quick to react to small or even imaginary setbacks. Later, she mentioned a reason for leaving that was not insignificant: the pain of withdrawal. According to officials at the small narcotics unit at Spring Grove, there is no need for an addict to suffer during withdrawal. But